Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony is about to begin. Please take your seats and silence your cell phones. Please direct your attention to the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, faculty, students, distinguished guests, and our special guests, our veterans. Welcome to the 2021 Cocoa Beach High School Veterans Day ceremony. I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Sebastian Weidick, the Minuteman Corps Cadets Battalion Commander. It is a distinct privilege of the JROTC Battalion, the Corps of Cadets, and our JROTC staff and leaders to present this program to you today. At this time, I would like to introduce the principal of Cocoa Beach High School, Dr. Mark Rindell.
Good morning, everyone. As the principal at Cocoa Beach Junior Senior, I am honored to be a part of this ceremony. Each week, I send the staff a bulletin, and in the bulletin, at the end of the bulletin, I provide a quote, sometimes funny, or at least I think it's funny, sometimes inspirational, or at least I think it's inspirational. But this week, the quote I selected was about veterans and military service. So I'm going to read the quote to you, and it's actually from George Washington. The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. Think about that. I'm going to read it again. The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation. President George Washington. And think about the fact that at that time we'd only just had the one war. That quote, those words of wisdom from President Washington ring true today and every day. So I am grateful, not just as a veteran, but as an American, that we honor the service and sacrifice of our soldiers in such a way here at Cocoa Beach. Thank you for being here today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Battalion Commander Wydick. Thank you.
Would everyone please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Army Junior ROTC Cadet Color Guard and the singing of the national anthem by Miss Madeline Pearson. Today's Color Guard members are led by the Color Guard Commander, Master Sergeant Caitlin Staddy, with Color Guard members Cadet Second Lieutenant Izzy Russo, Second Lieutenant Allie Lane, and Staff Sergeant Billy Day. You will be asked to remain standing while our cadets recite the Cadet Creed, led by the 2021 Cadet of the Year, Cadet Sergeant Billy Day.
Colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, who say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Carry. Colors.
Cadets, please sound off on the Cadet Creed. The Cadet Creed. I'm an Army Junior ROTC Cadet. I will always conduct myself to bring credit to my family, country, school, and Corps of Cadets. I am loyal and patriotic. I am the future of the United States of America. I do not lie, cheat, or steal. I will always be accountable for my actions and deeds. I will always practice good citizenship and patriotism. I will work hard to improve my mind and strengthen my body. I will seek the mantle of leadership and stand prepared to uphold the Constitution and the American way of life. May God grant you the strength to live by this creed.
Right. Face. Forward. March.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. It is my pleasure to introduce our very own choir who will be performing in Flanders Fields. In the past, we have been honored by having distinguished veterans tell their story. Today, we have reached out to those that have graduated from Cocoa Beach High School and are currently serving, or in the beginning of their military careers. Even more special is that there are those that walk amongst us here at Cocoa Beach High School that chose to serve this great country. Please focus your attention to the screen. Now, I would like to introduce the Senior Army Instructor for the Minuteman Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel James Destrade.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Aubrey Forsyth for putting that together. That was a lot of hard work. So a round of applause for Aubrey. Students, faculty, distinguished visitors, I am honored to welcome you to this morning's Cocoa Beach High School salute to our nation's veterans. We would all like to thank our invited guests for taking time from their busy schedule to be with us on this special day. A special thank you to our veterans. It is truly the privilege of the faculty, staff, and the phenomenal chorus and band, our JRTC cadets, and the technical expertise of our performing arts team led by Mr. Joseph Lark Riley to present this program to you today. Today is a day to celebrate and honor our American veterans, those that have served their country in both times of war and peace. I am the son of veterans, the nephew of a veteran, the son-in-law of a veteran, and a very proud father of 2 sons who served and are currently serving in the United States Army. I knew from a very early age that I was to serve our country as a soldier. I'm extremely proud of my service and extremely proud of those that I served with. Today we pay special tribute to those who have served during the past 20 years as we honor our veterans today of the global war on terrorism. This has been an incredibly challenging time for our nation's veterans, but their strength and perseverance makes them stand apart. These young men and women have stood tall in the face of adversity, and they stand for each and every one of us so that we can live a life of freedom. We owe them our gratitude and our respect. Many Americans mistakenly believe that Veterans Day is a day America sets aside to honor American military personnel who have died in battle or a result of wounds sustained in combat. However, that's not quite true. We celebrate those veterans on Memorial Day. Veterans Day, on the other hand, honors all American veterans, both living and dead. In fact, Veterans Day is intended to thank living veterans for their dedicated, loyal service to their country. Our veterans understand only those that are currently serving understand the meaning of duty, honor, courage, selfless service, integrity, and respect. On the 11th of November, the American people pause to recognize our veterans who served across the years. We also offer special thanks to those who still walk among us. Approximately 22 million of our fellow citizens carry the title of Marine, Soldier, Airman, Sailor, Coast Guardsman, National Guardsman, and Reservist. And now they carry the title of Veteran. We know them as our neighbors, friends, colleagues, family members, and they make us proud to be Americans. Today, we have veterans in our audience who served during times when our free world was at grave risk. Men and women of the greatest generation stepped up to fight for our freedom throughout the Pacific and Europe. This greatest generation showed why they earned that title. In storming the beaches of Normandy, France on June 6, 1944, this greatest generation is credited with liberating millions of people living in tyranny. They fought to preserve our way of life and to instill in future generations the ideas of freedom, patriotism, and perseverance. This war did not end the need for Americans to protect and defend their allies. Once again, our greatest generation answered the call to fight on the Korean Peninsula. From mountaintops and ridgelines, our forces fought to prevent the spread of communism. And although this conflict has been called the Forgotten War, those that served will never be forgotten. A decade later, during trying times, young men and women took on one of the greatest challenges that our armed forces have ever been faced with. Fighting in a war in a far-off place, in a war that was by no means popular on the home front. This war took place in a country called Vietnam. And this war produced a generation of warrior veterans who understand the price of war, and more importantly, the price of freedom. And for this, we are forever grateful. September 11, 2001, changed the world in which we live. When our homeland was attacked, once again, young men and women answered the call to serve and deploy to far-off places to defend the freedoms we all enjoy as Americans. Today, our current warriors defend our way of life by deploying throughout the world, taking the fight to those that wish us harm because of who we are and what we stand for. Whenever and wherever this service took place, our veterans have earned our nation's respect. From the day they first put on the uniforms until today, our nation's veterans share core values. Our veterans took an oath to serve a cause greater than self-interest. They live by a code and dedicate themselves to the highest standards of discipline, loyalty, diligence, and faithfulness to duty. You know them. They are your grandfathers and grandmothers, fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers, cousins, and in some cases, our sons and daughters. And thanks to their service, the people of this great nation have lived in freedom for 245 years. We all owe them our liberty and gratitude. So on Veterans Day, take a moment, thank those that have served and are currently serving for what they have done and what they are currently doing for our great nation. It's my distinct pleasure this year to once again pay special tribute to all of our students who are what we fondly call dependents. These are students who have grown up in a military family, who have a parent who is currently serving or has served in the past. These students truly understand the hardships that go along with being a military dependent, the multiple moves, the different schools, and the making of new friends. We would like to honor them today by having Cadet Allie Jo Tuggle, who herself is a military dependent. Her father serves in the United States Navy, and she will read the poem, Military Child, by Laura C. Marin.
I am a military child. Where am I from? I am a child of the world. I bloom anywhere. I am on an incredible journey. I know once we leave here, I will probably never walk this way again. I am an unrooted child. My life is mostly in brown boxes. One more time again, I'm going to say goodbye to all that I know. At this moment, I do not belong anywhere. Not in this place and not in the new place I am moving to. It is a puzzle of 1,000 pieces that has been turned upside down. It is up to you to put that puzzle back together again. I'm leaving behind all is familiar again. I'm facing the unknown one more time. My routes are short, unexpected separations, saying goodbye to friends. Some lessons are harder than others, but at the end, I have yet another success story. I am flexible. I'm not going to bend out of shape. Being strong is the only choice I have. I am walking this path. We are heading to a bright future together as a family and a nation. I proudly contribute to the peace and freedom we all enjoy. Sleep peaceably in your beds at night, United States of America. My family and I got your back.
It is my distinct pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker. Retired Major Bill Adams graduated from West Point in 1981 and was commissioned a lieutenant in the field artillery. He served in cannon and missile units throughout the United States and Germany. In 1988, he was assigned as an assistant professor of military science at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. He left active duty in 1992 and entered the Army Reserve component. He now works as a director for international Christian charitable organizations and performs volunteer service as a chaplain for MOAC, as a member of the Military Officers Association of Cape Canaveral. Major Adams is part of a team that is instrumental in the success of all of our JRTC programs in Brevard County. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm welcome to Major Retired Bill Adams.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rendell, Colonel Justardin, First Sergeant Staddy, Cadet Wadek, and this fine JROTC unit, my fellow veterans, ladies and gentlemen. I grew up in school learning something you probably did not learn, and that was to duck and cover. Does anybody have any idea what I'm talking about? It was the Cold War. It was going on, and we were under great threat of nuclear destruction. We wondered if we really had a future, honestly, because the Soviets were going to annihilate us with their nuclear bombs unless we could annihilate them first. What kind of a world is that? Well, I became a part of this Cold War as a Cold Warrior in 1981, graduating from the Military Academy West Point. I entered and joined the King of Battle. Now, Colonel Justardin is in what's called the Queen of Battle, and I joined the King of Battle, which is the field artillery. And as he mentioned, cannons and missiles were my specialty. But something new was happening on the battlefield at the time. And this was in the early 80s. We had gone to tactical nuclears. You know, you think a nuclear is big, destroy everything, bombs. Well, we had small nukes that would change the pace of the battlefield. It was our way of overcoming that Soviet numerical superiority that they had in Central to Western Europe. Now, it was the turning point of this Cold War, as it turns out. We'd been in the President Carter era, and honestly, there was a national depression under that nuclear shadow. And then Ronald Reagan became president, just as I graduated West Point. He came to our graduation and handed out our diplomas. It was quite an honor to have the President of the United States, but you wondered, what's this president going to do? Because he was brand new. But this president dared to imagine a U.S. victory. This is how he said he understood the Cold War. They lose, we win. Now, there was a new doctrine afoot as well. We were going from the active defense in Europe, which meant falling back continually because the Soviets were just expected to overwhelm. We said that you don't win that way, so we went to the air-land battle doctrine, which is an attack concept. We lived under mutually assured destruction. That's mad, isn't it? That's just exactly what it was called. It sounds terrible, but hey, it worked. The great powers, in 45 years of this Cold War, the great powers never fired a shot at each other. It's what Bill Whittle, in a podcast I recommend to you if you want to learn more about this, called What We Saw. He called it the greatest apocalypse that never happened. Now, there were proxy wars, though, to be sure, with many thousands of lives lost on the battlefields, keeping other nations free from tyranny, most notably Korea, where my dad fought. And my dad, who taught me to be a man and taught me to love my country, by his example, by the way, and Vietnam. And those were my Army instructors as I came in post-Vietnam. They taught me to be a soldier and to be a leader. And they taught me to serve my troops. And you know, they taught me this, and I commend it to all of you. It's just a bit of military wisdom that never fails you. It's mission first, people always. Consider that. Mission must be accomplished. People will always count, and that's who you take care of to get the job done. It speaks of the worth of the individual. And honestly, that's something about America that the Soviets didn't have, and it really defined a huge difference across what came to be called the Iron Curtain. Now, by the way, there were several significant spin-offs in our culture of this Cold War, and you know some of them very well. One of them is that we're sitting on the Space Coast. Well, there's a space program because there's a space race, and that was a race of the Cold War of East and West. It was really all about nuclear missiles and control of the skies and space. How about this that came out of the Cold War? We got forced into an internet and a digital age, moving from analog to digital, by the way, to make those missiles work right. And we came up with things like the cell phone and GPS, all of this technology getting pushed by a competition with a potentially devastating enemy. Now, as an Army captain, I was assigned to the 5th Corps Artillery in Germany in what was called and is called the Fulda Gap. We only had forward positions, by the way, no fallbacks, only forward. We would be advancing. You learn to train like you'll fight. By the way, I never was in a shooting war. I honor those who have. I'm a true blue cold warrior, but tell you what you do most of the time in military uniform is prepare and train like you'll fight so that you hopefully won't have to. That is good soldiering because you have shown deterrence and your enemy doesn't want to fight you. And that's how we would train. It was part of the Reagan doctrine, by the way, to push the Soviets to the brink, including those tactical nukes that a 20-something-year-old was entrusted with the authority to be able to wield. Can you imagine that? Winston Churchill then called this line we were defending the Iron Curtain. And that was shortly after World War II when all this got going. And George Orwell, the author, called it the Cold War the first time, and that stuck. And do you know it was 45 years? 46 to 91, by at least some historians measure, that was the Cold War. talk about forgotten war, that's the almost unknown war, but that standoff was the most potentially devastating world cataclysmic event that ever had to be stood up, and another side stood down. Mr. Gorbachev, Reagan said, standing at the gate at the Berlin Wall, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Do you know that Mr. Gorbachev, the final premier of the Soviet Empire, he did not tear down that wall? Do you know who did? Freedom-loving East Germans and people like them who said, it's time, that wall's coming down. And that empire just dissolved. The Cold War was over. But you know, in the process of it, we drew a line in the forests of opposing nations, alliances, societies, economies, moralities, and yes, faiths. Nations, the superpower, Soviet Union, versus the superpower, United States of America. Alliances like the Warsaw Pact, which was the Soviets and their allies of the East, and NATO, the US and its allies of the West. Societies, socialism, which has a certain ideal to it but requires heavy-handed forcing to make work, against individual liberty. And by the way, liberty is the freedom to do what's right, to do what's right. Economies, a communist economy versus a capitalist economy. They both have problems and failings, but capitalism reflects, again, individual liberty to do what's right with our economic strength. How about moralities? The supremacy of the state. Hey, we love our country, but ultranationalism is not the way. That was the Soviet way. Forget the people, it's the state. No, it's the supreme worth of the individual that makes the nation strong, and that's an American value. And then faiths. Yes, I know this is broadly generalizing, but essentially it was godless versus God-fearing, and that makes a difference. It really does. It's what we used to call the American way. Do you remember that Superman said it in the classic Superman movie? I believe in truth, justice, and the American way. And it's kind of corny, and we could kind of chuckle at it, but you know what? It's something to cheer about, because we ask the question, is it still our way? Is it still worth living for this way? Is it worth dying for? And by the way, if it's ever worth dying for, it's worth living for, so do that the very most. Well, we stood up then in the time of the Cold War and said, yes, this is worth living and dying for. We stared them down for those 45 years. And I ask you, do you stand for something? Will you stare down that which is evil? Their ideological threat, you see, was more external. And this is what's getting my generation now a bit agitated, if you kind of want to understand sort of that boomer generation and why are we kind of worried about America? Well, it seems like this ideological threat has become more internal, and it used to be more external. We're at risk of losing the faith and morality that we stood for, that we fought for, that we died for. I've been asked in my closing remarks, at least, to say what it means to be a veteran, and I hope you've gotten some idea of that from my heart, what it means to be, specifically for me, a Cold War veteran. And I honor those who have fought the hot wars, which much of the subsequent generations have now in this global war against terror. Warfare really shifted very significantly into a new mode. But keep these things in mind. Being a veteran means you actually give up some of your individual liberty to let your country put you in harm's way so that all can have that individual liberty to do the right thing. Being a veteran means your family served, and we just heard that beautiful poem. They sacrificed with you. You know, my wife and 4 kids at the time, it grew to 7, lived in that Fulda Gap with me, which was the touch point of the Soviet planned invasion of the West, and they were there with me as we stood the Soviets down. Being a veteran means having some idea of what this country stands for and why that's worth dying for. Being a veteran means really appreciating it, and we really do. When someone remembers the buddies you lost and honors the flag that you served under. So thank you for doing that. And being a veteran means being really glad you didn't just live this life for yourself. That's pretty empty, by the way. Living life just for yourself? No, being a veteran means you've lived some of your life at least, probably all of it, for the well-being of others. And that is a life worth living. Some veterans entered combat, some were wounded, some never came home. There's a tomb in Arlington that remembers some we can't even identify who they were, but we'll never forget them, even if we don't know exactly who they were. On Veterans Day, we remember all of them, and we thank them. And I thank you, Cocoa Beach High, for taking the time to remember. So God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
So a small token of our appreciation. Major Retired Bill Adams, thank you for your untiring support. Your dedication to the development of tomorrow's leaders is unmatched. Cocoa Beach Junior High School, JRTC, Veterans Day 2021. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our very own retired Master Sergeants Holly and Harry Waters, who are members of our All-Army Band. They will present for you America the Beautiful. Now we'd like to recognize veterans of the era and conflicts or wars in which they have served. First, would all veterans of World War II please stand and be recognized? Lights up, please. We are honored today to have Anthony Tortoso and 104-year-old Jake Harmon. Would all veterans of the Korean War please stand to be recognized? Would all veterans of Vietnam please stand and be recognized? Would all veterans of the Cold War please stand and be recognized? Would all veterans of Desert Storm in Panama please stand to be recognized? Would all veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq please stand and be recognized? Would all of our Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School faculty or staff who are veterans please stand at this time so we can honor you. We would also like to recognize all the active duty personnel in attendance at this time, many of whom are combat veterans having served in multiple theaters on more than one tour of duty. A special thanks to our active duty personnel. Also present are members of the National Guard and Reserve who have logged many months or on active duty, often overseas, for extended periods of time. Would you please stand and be recognized? Would all of you that have a family member actively serving in the military also please stand? We would also like to thank you for their service. Now, a salute to our armed forces. If you or any close relative has served in the Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, Marines, or Army, please stand when that service anthem for that branch is played. The first service recognized is the Coast Guard with Semper Paratus. Chief Warrant Officer Matthew Ricks represents our United States Coast Guard from Cape Canaveral Air Station, and the Coast Guard flag is presented by his very own cadet, Sophia Ricks. The Air Force with the United States Air Force song. Our United States Air Force is represented by Master Sergeant Ricardo De La Cruz, Jr. from Patrick Air Force Base 920th Rescue Wing. The Air Force flag is presented by Cadet Jessica Cooley. The Navy with Anchors Away. The Navy is represented by Petty Officer Platt, United States Navy Recruiting Command. The United States Navy colors are presented by Cadet Allie Jo Tuggle. the Marines, with the Marine Corps hymn. Our United States Marine Corps is celebrating a birthday today, and they are represented by Staff Sergeant Eric Zayas Navarro from the United States Marine Corps Recruiting Command. The Marine Corps flag is presented by Cadet Aiden Dybert. And last but not least, recognizes the United States Army with the Caisson song. Our Army is represented by Sergeant First Class Jabin Brady from the United States Army Recruiting Command, and the Army flag is presented by Cadet Ever Sills. The National Prisoner of War flag is presented by Cadet Anthony Self. Our Cocoa Beach school colors are presented by Cadets Trevin Trent, Joao and Francisco Liberal, and Derek Foster. And our nation's colors are presented by our very own JROTC Color Guard. Thank you to the band and to all of you who stood to be recognized for each of our great branches of the armed forces. Now I'd like to share with you a very special recognition that military organizations partake, especially during formal dinners. It's called the Missing Man Table, and it is represented by the table located to my front. I would also like to again dedicate this year's Missing Man Table to our 4 Cocoa Beach High School graduates who gave the ultimate sacrifice while serving our country. They are memorialized on our campus with their headstones resting by our flag on the north end of the football field. They are Army First Class Richmond Lucci, who perished in the Republic of Vietnam on May 29, 1967. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Billy Dean Pettings of the United States Army, who perished in the Republic of Vietnam on the 15th of June, 1971. Major Alfred Lee Butler of the United States Marine Corps, who perished in Lebanon on February 8, 1984. And Lieutenant Mike Hardcastle of the United States Navy, who perished on the 30th of August, 1984 in an A-7 Corsair training accident. The profession of arms is filled with symbolism, and this table is the way of symbolizing the fact that members of our profession are missing from our midst. Most people call them prisoners of war or cite them as missing in action, but we call them comrades. They are unable to be with us here this morning, and so we remember them. The table setup is very specific, with meaning in each detail. The table is round to show everlasting concern for the men still missing. The cloth is white to symbolize purity of the motives when answering the call to duty. There is a single rose displayed in a vase to remind us of the life of each of the missing and their loved ones, and friends who keep faith and wait for answers. A slice of lemon is on the bread plate is to remind us of the bitter fate of those captured and missing in a foreign land. There is also a pinch of salt on the table to symbolize the tears endured by those missing and their families who seek answers. A Bible is placed on the table to represent the strength gained through faith, and the glass is inverted to symbolize their inability to share in this morning's ceremony. Lastly, the chair is left empty to symbolize those that are missing. Surrounding the Missing Man Table are 2 cadets who represent the future of our military. Our military is made up of young men and women who strive to be leaders. Young troops start their career in our military by enlisting with the goal of becoming senior non-commissioned officers, always leading and caring for our soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors, and Coast Guardsmen. Cadet Second Lieutenant Cole Monda represents those troops. Cadet Monda has enlisted in the United States Army and will attend Army basic training this summer. Our officer corps, comprised of special men and women who take on the challenge of leadership by becoming commissioned officers. These are college graduates that strive for leading and managing large organizations in both peacetime and during times of conflict. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Sebastian Wydick, who is a member of this year's graduating class, represents our future officer corps. Cadet Wydick plans on attending the United States Air Force Academy upon graduation. Please, let us all stand and pause for a moment of silence to honor all those veterans who could not stand with us today. Following the moment of silence, taps will be performed by the Minutemen trumpeteers Oscar McClellan and Ryan Murphy.
Freeze. Colors. Carry. Colors.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. I want to thank you for your respectful attention. Please take a moment tomorrow to thank our veterans for their service. Also, special thanks to the theater staff, especially to all our veterans who are in attendance today. I can't thank you enough. At this time,